The scrapyard of silence. The wind moved slowly across the wasteland, carrying the smell of rust and smoke. Broken ships lay scattered in the distance, their twisted frames sharp against the gray sky. This was the scrapyard, a place where old machines and forgotten lives were left to rot. No one came here except scavengers looking for scraps. It was a graveyard of metal and silence. In the middle of this forgotten place lay a girl. Her skin was pale, her body thin, and her eyes wide, with fear. She was paralyzed from the waist down. Her arms trembled as she tried to move, but her legs did not answer. She had been left there by the ones who should have loved her most, her own family. They had carried her here days ago, whispering that she was a burden. She could not walk, could not fight, could not survive. To them, she was useless. And so, in the cold shadows of the scrapyard, they abandoned her. The sound of their footsteps faded, and she was left alone with the rusting metal and the cries of distant birds. The girl lay there, staring at the broken sky above. Hunger clawed at her stomach. Her throat was dry and her lips cracked. She wanted to scream, but her voice was weak. Every hour that passed made her body colder, her hope smaller. She believed no one would ever come, but fate had a different plan. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the ruins in blood-red light, footsteps echoed in the distance. The sound was different from her family's. It was heavier, slower, more careful. The girl's heart raced. She tried to call out, but only a small whimper escaped her lips. From behind the wreckage of a fallen ship, a figure appeared. It was a man, tall, strong, with worn clothes and a pack slung across his back. His boots were covered in dust and his eyes were sharp, scanning the scrapyard like a soldier searching for danger. He was human. The girl froze. She had heard stories of humans, creatures of war, killers from ancient legends. Her people whispered that humans were dangerous, that they destroyed everything they touched. But this man did not look like a monster. He looked tired, scarred, but alive. The man stopped when he saw her. At first his face hardened, ready for trouble. But then he noticed the weakness in her arms, the way her body trembled. His eyes softened. Slowly, carefully, he walked closer. The girl's lips moved. "Help me." Her voice was faint, almost lost to the wind. The man knelt beside her. For a moment he said nothing. He studied her face, her broken body, the fear in her eyes. Then, he reached into his pack and pulled out a flask of water. Without a word, he lifted her head gently and let her drink. The water touched her tongue and tears filled her eyes. She drank as if it were life itself. When she finished, she whispered again, Why are you helping me?" The man's voice was low and rough. "Because you're alive, and no one should be left here to die." The words struck her harder than the cold ever had. Her own family had abandoned her, but this stranger, this human, chose to stay. He gave her food, small pieces of dried bread, from his pack. She ate slowly, her weak hands shaking. The man waited patiently, watching the shadows around them. The scrapyard was dangerous at night. Creatures moved between the wrecks, searching for anything living. He knew they could not stay here long. When she finished eating, he spoke again. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra." The man nodded. "I am Kyle." For the first time in days, she felt safe. She clung to his arm, afraid that if she let go, he too would leave her. Kyle looked at her broken legs, at the dirt and cuts on her skin. His jaw tightened. He could walk away, leave her like the others. It would be easier. She was a burden. Weak, fragile, helpless. But deep inside, he knew he would not. As the night grew darker, Kyle lifted her gently into his arms. She was light, almost weightless, as if the scrapyard had already begun to take her away. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. For the first time since her family left her, she felt warmth. The stars above burned bright, watching as a human carried an abandoned alien child out of the scrapyard of silence. Neither of them knew what awaited them beyond the rusting graveyard, but one truth had already been written. The galaxy would remember this choice, and it would tremble. The human's choice. The night was cold, and the stars above glowed faintly through the drifting smoke of the scrapyard. Cale sat near the small fire he had built among the ruins. The flames flickered against broken metal, casting strange shadows around him. Beside him, wrapped in an old blanket, lay the alien girl, Lyra. She was weak, her body still trembling from hunger and fear. Cale looked at her carefully. He had not planned for this. He had come to the scrapyard only to search for parts, maybe something valuable to trade for food. Instead, he had found her, a child abandoned by her own people, left to die in silence. He told himself he should leave her. She was not his responsibility. She was a burden. But every time he looked at her small face, every time he saw her, eyes watching him with hope, he knew the truth. He could not walk away. Lyra whispered softly, her voice almost lost in the crackling of the fire. "Why did you come here?" Cale thought for a moment. "I was looking for something to survive," he said. "But I found you instead." The girl lowered her gaze, tears filling her eyes. "My family, they said I was too weak. They said I would only slow them down." Her words shook, filled with pain. "So they left me here." Cale felt anger rise in his chest. He had seen cruelty before, wars, betrayals, entire colonies burned. But there was something about this that cut deeper. To leave a child helpless and broken in a place like this, it was more than cruelty, it was cowardice. "You are not weak," he said firmly. "They were wrong to leave you." Lyra looked at him as if trying to believe his words. For the first time in days, she felt like she mattered. Cale leaned back, staring into the flames. He knew what saving her meant. It meant danger. It meant being hunted. The galaxy was full of predators, armies, and governments that cared nothing for the weak. Carrying a child like her would slow him down, expose him to enemies, and make every step harder. But he also knew one thing. Walking away would kill something inside him. He remembered old human stories told in whispers, how their kind had always been different. Other species fought for power, for territory, for survival. But humans, they fought for each other, for family, for strangers, for anyone who needed them. That was what made them dangerous. That was what made them impossible to erase. Cale stood and looked at the girl. "You will not die here," he said. His voice was steady, stronger than it had been in years. Her eyes widened. "You mean, you will take me?" "Yes." Tears ran down her cheeks, but this time they were not from despair. She reached out her fragile hand and Cale took it gently. In that moment, a silent bond formed between them. A bond that would not break. The next morning, Cale lifted her into his arms. She was light, fragile as glass, but he held her firmly. The scrapyard stretched around them, endless and lifeless, but Cale walked with purpose. For the first time in years, he was not walking alone. As they moved, scavengers hiding in the shadows watched him. Some whispered in disbelief. "A human? Saving one of them?" Others laughed. "He is a fool. She will only slow him down." But Cale ignored them. Each step he took echoed louder than any whisper. It was not just the sound of boots on metal. It was the sound of a choice, a human's choice. By nightfall, they reached the edge of the wasteland. The horizon burned red as the sun disappeared. Cale set Lyra down gently and looked back at the scrapyard one last time. That place of silence had taken much from him. Hope, trust, belief in others. But it had also given him something greater. Purpose. He turned to Lyra, who was watching him with tired but determined eyes. She asked softly, "Why do you care?" Cale knelt before her. "Because no one cared for you. and sometimes one choice can change everything. Lyra did not fully understand his words, but she felt their weight. She nodded, her small hand clutching his sleeve. For the first time since her family left her, she no longer felt alone. Far above, stars glimmered quietly, watching. Somewhere in the galaxy, whispers of this moment would soon spread. Whispers of a human who had chosen to save what others had thrown away, and the galaxy, though it did not know it yet, would be shaken. The hidden truth. The road beyond the scrapyard stretched wide and empty. Kale carried Lyra in his arms, each step slow but steady. The girl was fragile, yet her eyes followed everything around them with quiet awareness. She no longer asked him if he would leave her. Deep inside, she knew the human had already made his choice. At night, Kale built a fire in the ruins of an old outpost. He gave her water and food, saving the larger share for her even though his own hunger grew. Lyra watched him carefully, her thin hands trembling as she held the bread. "Why do you do this?" she asked softly. Kale shrugged. "Because I could not walk away." Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile, but then her gaze dropped to the fire. Silence stretched between them until she whispered, "There is more. That is why they left me." Kale frowned. "More?" The girl hesitated, her voice shaking. "Not only because I cannot walk. My family, they were afraid of me." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Afraid? You are only a child." She looked up at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "I remember things, codes, numbers, patterns that are not mine. I dream them at night, and when I wake, I can still see them." She pointed weakly to her head. "They live here." Kale leaned closer. "What kind of codes?" Lyra's voice dropped lower. "Ancient ones. My people call them cursed. They say those who carry them bring only death. My father said the galaxy would hunt us if anyone found out, so they left me here so no one would know." Kyle stared at her. He had heard stories of lost weapons from forgotten wars, weapons tied to the old human legends, machines of destruction locked by codes no one could break. And now, this paralyzed child claimed those codes lived inside her mind. "You think your family feared the galaxy would come for you?" Kale asked. Lyra nodded. "Yes, they feared me more than they loved me." The words cut deep, sharper than any blade. Kale clenched his fists. He had seen cruelty in many forms, but this was beyond cruelty. A family had chosen to abandon their child not just because she was weak, but because she carried something powerful, something they feared would destroy them. That night, Kale could not sleep. He sat watching the fire fade, thinking of the girl's words. If she spoke the truth, then protecting her would bring danger greater than he had ever known. Armies would come, hunters would follow. And yet, as he looked at her sleeping face, peaceful for the first time in days, he knew he would not turn away. The next morning before the sun rose, Kale packed their few belongings. He lifted Lyra gently and said, "We keep moving." She opened her eyes slowly. "You believe me?" "Yes." His voice was steady. "And because of that, I will protect you." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not from sadness. "Then you are not afraid?" Kyle looked out at the horizon. "I am afraid, but fear is not enough to stop me." They walked on, deeper into the wastelands. Rumors began to spread in the towns nearby. Traders whispered of a human carrying a paralyzed alien child. Some mocked him, others cursed him, but a few spoke in hushed voices. Why would a human risk everything for one broken child, unless she is more than she seems? The whispers grew, and with them, danger followed. One night, as Kyle and Lyra rested under the shadow of a collapsed tower, he heard movement in the dark. Shapes crept between the ruins, their eyes glimmering faintly. Hunters, Kyle drew his weapon and stood before the girl. His voice was firm. "Stay behind me." The hunters stepped into the firelight. Their leader sneered. "The girl is ours. Step aside, human." Kyle tightened his grip. "She is not yours, not anymore." The leader's smile widened. "You do not even know what she carries. Protecting her will bring death to you, to everyone." Kale's jaw hardened. "Then let it come, because she is under my protection now." For a moment, silence filled the ruins. Then the hunters lunged. Kale moved like lightning, every strike precise, every motion fueled by rage and resolve. The hunters fell one by one, but still more came. Through it all, Lyra watched, her eyes wide, whispering the codes she carried inside her mind as if they themselves gave Kale strength. When the last body hit the ground, Kale stood breathing heavily, his blade dripping. The hunters lay silent in the dust. He turned back to the girl. "They will keep coming," she said quietly. Kyle nodded. "Then we will keep fighting." The fire burned low, casting their shadows, long against the ruins. The galaxy did not yet know it, but the choice Kale had made, the choice to protect her, was about to shake empires. The rising threat. The ruins were quiet after the fight, but Kale knew the silence would not last. The hunters who came for Lyra were only the beginning. By killing them, he had sent a message, and messages traveled faster than ships. He carried her through the night, his body tired, his arms heavy, but his steps steady. Lyra rested against his chest, her breathing slow. She did not speak, but her eyes remained open as if she too knew what was coming. By dawn, they reached the edge of a small settlement. The streets were poor, lined with broken walls and flickering lights. Kyle kept his hood low, carrying Lyra, carefully, but he could feel eyes watching them. Whispers stirred in every corner. "That's the human. He carries a crippled alien girl. Why would he risk his life for her?" Kale ignored them, but he knew the whispers would spread. In a galaxy where humans were already feared as shadows of old legends, even a small act could grow into a storm. Inside an abandoned storehouse, Kale laid Lyra down gently and lit a small fire. She watched him with steady eyes. "They will come again," she said. "Yes," Kale answered. His voice was calm, but his mind was sharp. More hunters, more enemies, maybe even armies. Her small hands gripped the edge of the blanket. "Because of me." Kyle shook his head. "Not because of you. Because of what they fear." He looked at her, fragile, paralyzed, yet carrying codes inside her mind that could change the balance of power. Her family had left her out of fear. But Kale understood something they never did. The galaxy had always feared what it could not control. That night, in the council halls of distant worlds, the whispers reached the leaders. Reports spoke of a human defending a paralyzed alien child, hunters failing to bring her back, and strange codes tied to forgotten weapons. Some leaders mocked the story. "A crippled girl? A human scavenger? This is nothing." Others grew pale. If the codes are real, then she is not just a child, she is a key, and the humans are returning. Arguments erupted, armies prepared in secret, old alliances cracked, with suspicion. The galaxy trembled under rumors, all born from one man's choice in a scrapyard. Back in the settlement, Kale felt the change. Soldiers began to appear in the streets. Strange ships circled in the skies. The air itself carried tension. Lyra saw it too. "They will not stop," she whispered. Kale crouched beside her, his eyes firm. "Then neither will I." The next attack came at dusk. A squad of armored fighters stormed the storehouse, their weapons glowing. Kale moved instantly, placing himself between them and Lyra. The first shots lit the room with fire. Kale rolled, struck and fought like a storm. His blade cut through armor, his fist crushed steel. But the fighters were trained, fast, relentless. Through the chaos, Lyra pressed her hands to her temples, whispering the codes that filled her mind. Numbers, patterns, sequences, shining like light behind her eyes. Suddenly, the enemy's weapons sparked. Their systems froze. Kale struck them down as their armor failed one by one until silence filled the storehouse again. He turned to her, panting, blood on his arms. She looked back at him with fear and guilt. "They know," she whispered. "They know what I carry." Kyle sat beside her, his voice steady despite the fire in his chest. "Then let them come. Let the galaxy see what happens when they hunt, a child under human protection." Far away, news spread faster than light. Traitors, mercenaries, soldiers, all carried the same tale. A paralyzed alien girl left to die, saved by a human, hunted for secrets that could shatter empires. And a single human who would not abandon her. Some whispered in awe, others in fear. But all agreed on one thing: this choice would not remain small. It was becoming something greater. And in the shadows of deep space, fleets began to move. Not just hunters now, but armies. Not just whispers now, but war. The galaxy was waking, and humanity, long thought silent, was rising with it. The choice that shook the galaxy was no longer silent. From world to world, the same story spread like wildfire. A paralyzed alien girl abandoned to die, saved by a human, hunted by armies. And still, she lived. Still, the human carried her. What had begun in a scrapyard now echoed across empires. Kale knew it could not last. Armored patrols were already closing in, fleets shifting across space, bounty hunters chasing every rumor. But he kept moving, carrying Lyra through ruined towns and shadowed valleys, never letting her go. Every step became harder, every fight bloodier. Yet with each battle survived, the whispers grew louder. One human defies them all. In the ruins of an ancient city, Kale made his stand. He placed Lyra behind a wall of broken stone and faced the soldiers marching through the streets. Their leader stepped forward, his voice sharp through the crackling of a speaker. "Give her to us, human. You cannot win. She is not your burden." Kale's voice cut back like iron. "She is not a burden. She is a child." The soldiers raised their weapons. Kyle lifted his blade. But before the fight began, Lyra cried out. Her voice, though weak, carried a strength that silenced the field. "No," she shouted. "I will not be taken. I am not afraid." Her eyes glowed faintly. And in that moment, Kale saw the truth in full. The codes inside her mind were not just weapons. They were keys. Ancient human keys tied to war machines hidden in silence for thousands of years. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity, but humanity had left seeds behind waiting for this moment. The soldiers faltered as the ground shook. From beneath the ruins, metal awoke. Massive shapes rose from the earth, ancient machines of war, their armor black, their eyes burning with light. They had slept for ages, waiting for the signal only Lyra could give. The army panicked. "It cannot be. Those are human machines." Kale stood tall, his voice calm but fierce. "You abandoned her. I saved her. And because of that, the galaxy will remember what humans do when others fail." The machines roared to life, their weapons blazing. The soldiers scattered, their fleets in orbit suddenly powerless against the awakening storm. Kyle lifted Lyra into his arms as the ground trembled with fire and steel. She clung to him, whispering, "I am not alone anymore." He looked down at her, his jaw set. "No, you never were." News of the battle spread faster than light. Worlds that had mocked humans trembled. Empires that had dismissed them now feared their return. The galaxy realized too late that silence had never meant death, it had meant waiting. Humanity had endured, hidden in fragments, in codes, in children like Lyra. And now, with one human's choice, the silence was broken. Kyle did not claim victory. He did not raise banners or demand crowns. He simply walked forward, carrying the girl who had been abandoned, protected now by machines that shook the stars. But his act carried more power than any empire's rule. It was proof of what humanity truly was. Killers when threatened, protectors when needed, impossible to erase. In council chambers across the galaxy, leaders spoke in fear. If one human can do this, what happens when all of them return? Kale held Lyra close as the machines followed them into the horizon. The war was not over. The hunters would come again, the empires would not stop, but it no longer mattered, because the galaxy had seen the truth. One human's choice had shattered. Silence. One human's choice had saved a child the galaxy had thrown away. One human's choice had shaken empires and awoken legends. And now, the stars themselves whispered the warning that would echo forever. Do not harm what humans choose. To protect,